מסכת Bava Metzia, Bezrat Hashem, page 19. We'll start in the very last line of page 18b. Several important definitions that we discussed several times in the past. Nichsei milog and Nichsei tzon barzel. When we are speaking about circumstance of husband-wife that change, we structure it based on our Holy Torah by two important definitions. One is the estate that woman come with something that she owns prior to her relationship, binding relationship of marriage. That basic principle of estate remain in her possession under her title, regardless to her circumstance of divorce or become a widow. Versus the second one, which called Nichsei milog, meaning if there is an estate and in the estate produce a produce. For our example, let's say she's bringing a orchard that produces, let's use it, trees that have, let's say, oranges, and is X amount of boxes of oranges produced on a weekly basis. So at the time that she bind by her marriage, any produce that come out of those trees in the time being between her binding agreement of marriage until the status change, which is the time of either divorce or losing a husband, that period of time we give the husband an access to the dividends. So again, to make it very clear, we have the principle and we have the temporary dividends. The principle is used the word tzon barzel, which is the foundation of her assets that remain in her belonging regardless. Milog is a temporary definition by halacha that gives her the right over the foundation, but give him only during this period of time, the moment that they are a couple to the moment that they departure, he can have an access to that. What happened in the cases that we discussed in the past several days, or found some type of the document, and we are not sure who is owning this document and who is abide by those documents. So when it's come to the issue of Nichsei milog, we have to examine it carefully, because sometimes there are contracts that binding by certain date and time, and as we explained in the past several dapim, it can happen such as husband write a bill of divorce and then retrieve it or retract it or hand it over half a year later. So in between is a question, vice versa. She can recollect something that not earned by her or vice versa if there is a distance in the date. Can be in the cases of divorce, can be in the cases of losing the partner. Because the whole issue of unknown when it's come to a documentation, the first we're using in our discussion based on our Mishnah is a bill of divorce, then we also need to examine, and soon you see cases of some suspicious over vengeance from one party against the other, such as giving the bill of divorce and claiming that it wasn't given and vice versa. We explained in the past that part of modern day rabbinic court, she received the bill of divorce, but then returned it to the court, and they tear it and give her a document that she's divorced based on all the circumstances that already happens and suspicion over belittle the value of those documents. So based on that, and as we said, the core discussion is the documentation or founding documentation. We're also going to discuss the tzava'at shchiv based on Gemara and Bava Batra and others, when we have a will of someone who is in the breach of death, And we explain, based on many discussions, that the person that is close to the end, we, unlike other systems, will not require that person to sign a full contract for many reasons, mental reasons and other reasons. And therefore, we take his will at the very end as value, if they are obviously the witnesses and more, to a written contract. So based on that, how you treated changing mind of last moment based on documentation that found. So let's go to this fascinating discussion. Rababa Bar Chana, as we said, we are now on page 19, top of the page. Rababa Bar Chana, based on several commentaries, let's start with Rashi. Rashi, on page 19a, the top of the page, said, Irkas lei gita she'eshaliach lehaviv irkas lei ve'ashkachuhu. So here we talk about Rabba Bar Chana, that he was an agent, an emissary to transfer a bill of divorce between husband and wife, and he was asked to be the trustee to transmit, to deliver from the husband to his wife the bill of divorce, and unfortunately he lost it in the Beit HaMidrash, in the house of studies, and Rabbi Akiva Eiger have a different malach, but we just go by Rashi. Irkas legita bei midrasha. So he lost it, and based on our discussion the past several days, we explained the concept of shayarot metzuyot, meaning we differentiate between isolated area versus a lot of traffic. Those days was wagons, but Beit HaMidrash is a place that many people comes in and out, studies. So therefore, we assume that we are here with a case of losing the bill of divorce, and it's a large period of time between the moment he lost it until they found it. And here we have two different domains that we need to take under consideration. One is siman, meaning that you recognize the document by a certain sign, just as again springboard for our discussions and understanding. If a fellow found Rolex watch or something, you need to give some sign of proof that you know and you own it. So that's one way to know the siman, the sign. The other one is tvi'ut ayin. Soon we're going to expand on that later on. It's going to be another discussion, meaning that you give the recognition, the trust of a giant leader like Rabba Bar Chana, an assumption that we take his word that it's really truth. But here the situation is, they found it and they returned it to him. They found the get that he lost as a shaliach, as an agent. Somebody, but not immediately, takes some time, let's say several days or whatever it is, and then they return to him. So he came back to our discussion and asked question. Let's think together, what's the real reason why they gave it to me, meaning Rabba Bar Chana? Amar, isimana itlei begavei, itviut eina itvei begavei. Here Rashi explained to us that we have two different ways to recognize and return a lost, which is a great mitzvah. If there is something that you recognize in the document that proof that based on that code or memories or something, we see that it's yours, or as Rashi explained, based like Mr. A or Reuven recognized Shimon based on the knowledge of a person between two parties, that's sufficient to return the item. Ahadiru ni'alei, they return it, meaning they return to him. Now, let's understand a little deeper. There are some rabbis that tells us that tvi'ut ayin can be, since there are two witnesses and the handwritten of the scribe on the document. This is again something that you recognize in the eye scene or testimony, that you can bring as evidence to know that the person tells you the truth. We should remember that when it's come to a testimony in a broader understanding, when you have a case of, God forbid, a murder, right? So many times you take a testimony of two witnesses, not because they know in person the murderer, they can describe the dress, the facial, other evidence that they have over murder of someone. We do not require a personal knowledge of that individual. So here they said, Chabad Bar Chana wants to examine the reason why they returned the bill of divorce that he lost as an agent to him. Lo yadana. He is wondering. He said, I have no idea at this point. Im mishum simana ahaduani alei. If they give it to me because there is a distinguished mark that I supplied, or vekasavrei simanim deoraita, and they hold that the distinguishing mark are used to return lost items by Torah law. Another option is im mishum tviut eina ahadru hanihali, or the reason is they returned it to me due to my visual recognition, and it was specifically because I am a well-respected Torah scholar, and as a Torah scholars are relied upon when they say that they recognized an item. We learn that Gemara in Chulin 96 and other sources that we make a decision based on testimony that is seen by eyes. V'davka tzuva derabanan. You have to say that that specifically applies to well-respected Torah scholars. Aval inish de alma, lo. But ordinary mundane person will not be relied upon to recognize the item and have it returned to him. Tosfot expand on that. And you see it not only in Tosfot, you see it later on both in the discussion of the lost item, Hashavat Aveda, on both pages 23 and 24, that you take the word of Torah scholar as a tviut ayin, something that is respected and taken. But not everyone goes along with this. Maharsha, for example, challenged, and he said, can be even an ordinary person that can be truthful, or you can argue and you say that not always. You need to examine very carefully when it's an ordinary person, what's the motivation for his testimony? Is that in order to gain some money or other reasons? There is a machloket rishonim, is a disputation among the rabbis. You see it in particularly the early rabbis like Rabbi Shimon ben Aderet, Rashba, Ritva, Ran, and many others. They ask, is that applies specifically of cases of get, or bill of divorce, or any other discussion over lost items? There are those who say that ne'eman, the person can be trustworthy, and there are those who say that he carries negiot, he can potentially have other motivations. Either he doesn't want to lose the money for the schar shlichut, for the delivery of the bill of divorce, or because he doesn't want the person who sent him to be mad, to be angry at him, and more. So we need to examine when he's an ordinary person, and as we said, there's two different avenues, a disputation, if you can hold that average ordinary person is reliable or not to be testified and accepted his testimony. Now we go back to that Braita and examine a little more based on our discussion yesterday, Daf, page 18b. Gufa matzah get isha bashuk. Here you have a situation that one found a woman's bill of divorce in the shuk, in the marketplace. So here you have to have a clear conditions. Bizman shehaba'al modeh yachzir laisha. If the husband said, let's use name, the husband called him Yitzchak and her name is Rivka. The husband said, yes, I admit that I wrote and gave her. Those days, not use the bet din always. Sometimes you just hire a scribe, write it, have the two witnesses, transmit it to her. So if you go with that bill of divorce and the husband said, yes, I did it, then in a way you return it to her. However, if the husband said, no, I did not divorce her, here we have a real problem. And the Gemara said, lo yachzir lo lazeh velo lazeh. A person should not return to neither husband nor to the wife. Earlier we expanded on that, the whole variation of suspicion for either party to abuse the system by recollecting or tricking the system. So in very short, neither one of them receive it. So the Gemara here wants to examine the logical reasoning behind that. And they ask, Bizman shabal modeh miha yachazir laisha. You tell me if Yitzchak, the husband in our case, admitted that he divorced his wife, then you tell me that that person who found the get should give it to Rivka, to the wife. Why you don't have a concern? V'leichush shema katav liten benisan v'lo natan la ad tishrei. It may happen that this fellow husband Yitzchak, he wrote the bill of divorce in the month of Nisan, and the real physical transmitting of the document of the bill of divorce happens to be received by Rivka. He sent it to her and she received it a half a year later. So what's the problem with that? We learn in Bava Batra in Mishnah, page 116, that the husband can ask and hire a scribe to write a bill of divorce for him, and without her presence, and sent a fellow, and later with two witnesses, and give it to her. So therefore, it may happen, and that's one of our concerns, that may Yitzchak have the mindset to divorce her, and then he retreated and he did not divorce her, and the real divorce took place much later, which was in Tishrei. It's a half a year later. Now, listen the problem when it's come to a state involved with that divorce. Ve'azal ba'al zabin peirei minisan ad tishrei. What did we say in our introduction? That we have two different estates. We have a state that she carries with her, that is the principle, no matter what. And there is a state that we call nichsei milog, which is, you remember the boxes of oranges. That's the access the husband had in between the time, meaning from the moment they bind by marriage until they depart from each other. So the problem is, since it was a period between the date on the get, which was a half a year earlier in Nisan, and the receiving of the get by her was a half a year later in Tishrei, it can happen that the husband have an access to that dividends, not the principal, the dividends, which we call nichsei milog, let's say it's a produce, and since the rabbis put an enactment that the husband have the access during the period of marriage to that dividend of estate, and here we have problems, which is ומפקה לגיטה דחטב בניסן ועתיה למטרף לקוחות שלא כדין. Now she comes here and she in a way potentially can abuse the system, which is Rivka received it a half a year later only in Tishrei, but the date on the document was written in Nisan, half a year earlier. Yitzchak as a husband had by the rabbinic enactment the right to access the dividend of the estate. He sold those, let's say, boxes of oranges to customers. She is now coming after the customers, and what did she claim? Oh, he has no right to sell it to you, you owe me money. Why? Or you need to return it because if you look at the bill of divorce, it's written a half a year earlier. And that's wrong as wrong can be, because as we said, it can be a false claim that you, Rivka, come out to those customers and she said, you took for my ex-husband, for my husband, a dividend that he is not entitled to, because all the entitlement of the dividends apply only to our marriage. And if you look at my bill of divorce, she claimed, it's go back to a half a year earlier. And therefore, since he sold you something that is not his, you owe me. Now, the truth is she's wrong, because the reality is that she received it a half a year later. Now, the Gemara expanded on that, based on the idea of ועתיה למטרף לקוחות שלא כדין, that potentially she can come and repossess the produce from the purchases unlawfully. And they said, Hanicha leman de'amar. We already have this discussion in a tractate that dealing with bill of divorce. Obviously, is the tractate Gittin, page 17b. Over there, we have two views how you treated situation like that. So one said, כיוון שנטל עיניו לגרשה, שוב אין לבעל בפירות. Meaning, the moment Yitzchak make up his mind that he's going to divorce Rivka, even the effect took place a half a year later, he lost his right to the accessibility of the produce immediately, because the moment he have that mindset, it's over. That's one view. One rabbi hold it way. So Hanicha, it's good according to that view that said that the moment Yitzchak, even in Nisan, half a year earlier, made up his mind that he's going to divorce Rivka, even the physical acting of handing to her the bill of divorce with the witnesses took place a half a year later. But since he had that mindset, he lost the rabbinic enactment rights over the dividends of her estate immediately. So now we understand it's all well. That's good and well. So that's shafir. Because the produce that come out from Nisan to Tishrei, it's not his, it's her. However, Ela leman de'amar, according to the other side in Tractate Gittin, page 17b, the rabbi that said, as long as they are under marriage, as long as she's not received the get, with the process, with the witness, with everything, and it's in her hand and it's over, as long as it's not over, it's not over. It's not over meaning he has the access to nichsei milog, to the dividend of the estate. So, Ela leman de'amar, yesh laba'al perot ad shat netina. But according to that view, in Gittin 17b, that said that Yitzchak, the husband, has the right to the dividends of that period of time as long as they are under marriage agreement, even if they don't live together, as long as she is not fully received the get, he has the right over the dividend. Ma'ika lemeimar. What is there to say that you give her now the get? How in the world you give her the get? Don't you concern about lawful action of Rivka, of her, by repossessing or collecting wrongfully from purchaser, as we said earlier, in that period of time? So the Gemara explained and answered and said, Ki ita lemitraf. If that scenario happens, which is she received it in Tishrei and now she's going after those purchases from their husbands in that half a year, amrina la, those buyers, those customers that purchase from her, you can use the word ex-husband, Yitzchak, the produce, they will say to her, Ay tere'aya eimat mata gita liyadech. אנחנו לא פראיירים. It's not going to be just like that we are going to give you something just because you tell us. Bring a proof that you receive the get, not the day that it's written on the get, but bring a clear testimony of witnesses and full decorum of testimony, the exact day that she received the get, and in this case is a half a year later, and as long as she doesn't have clear evidence of the date, the fact that you have the predated the date half a year earlier, that closed the door for her to repossess unlawfully assets from those customers in that period of a half a year. There is a concept of reuta, ritva, and other expand, which is the idea of a person is very cautious, is very scrupulous when it's come to a valuable documentations, and we are here in a big quandary. Do we differentiate between bill of divorce and other documentations? But so here we try to juxtapose the law over bill of divorce to the law of other documentation that we bring to our court, which is, as we learn on page 12b, there are shitrei chov, meaning you have the creditor, you have the borrower, and you have the documentation involved with the loan. So, im yesh bahem acharayut nechasim, if part of the contract that Mr. Reuven giving to Mr. Shimon X amount, let's say 100K, and there is a lien against certain estate, or it's written that the borrower and the co-signer, the witnesses, are responsible for that debt, meaning that the creditor can go after either Shimon estate or the co-signer for Shimon estate in case the loan did not return. Lo yachazir. So therefore, when you found a document of loan, you're not returning it to a creditor. Ve'ukimna, and over there on page 12 we expand and explain that the Mishnah tells us Kshechayav modeh, meaning Shimon, the borrower, admitted by the rabbinic court that he did not pay the debt, but nevertheless you not return the documentation to the creditor, to Reuven, umishum shema katav benisan v'lo lava tishrei, because it can be a documentation that the date is in a way predated. It's written on Nisan by Reuven, but the time that the money, the transfer of the money or whatever involved with valuables happens to be a half a year later, and therefore, since we are concerned that the borrower collects the fund only a half a year later, וכתריף לקוחות שלא כדין. The same way, the creditor can go after people unlawfully. So, do you compare the two? Do you compare the bill of divorce issues with other issues of suspected documentation of loan? Hatam Nami, over there, when it's come to a loan contract, lehadar, we should return it to Reuven, to the creditor, the lender, v'chi'atei lemitraf, and if he comes after customers that dealt with Shimon, they can say the same claim as we mentioned earlier in the get, they can say here too, Neimale, aite raya, emat mata, shtartov liadrach. You have the obligation, you have the burden of bringing a clear proof that this promissory note came into your possession that particular day. So, as long as you don't have that, you cannot collect from the buyer who purchased from the other party in the time in between. You cannot have any unlawful repossessions. Amrei, the students in the yeshiva, the disciples said that you cannot juxtapose, cannot compare bill of divorce to promissory note. By its understanding of the nature, hacha gabei get isha, when we speak about bill of divorce between husband, wife, we use a name between Yitzchak and Rivka, okay? Atei lokeach v'tav'a, amar, hayda adua Rabbanan legita delo te'agin v'teitiv. The people who said, look, the reason that she received the get is because the rabbis are very lenient and very concerned that she should not be a deserted wife. Unfortunately, it happened throughout our history, for many reasons, good or bad, that she stuck, she cannot get married to anyone else because she's still considered a married woman, and therefore the Bet Din, rabbinic court, are more lenient in giving her the get. But now, based on that, she wants to collect fund, that's a different story. She have the obligation to prove where exactly the exact absolute proof that she received the bill of divorce in her possession. Versus hacha, however here, gabei shtarchov, when we come to a promissory note, lo ate lokeach v'tava, mida'adua ni'alei rabbanan l'shtarchov, pshita lemai hilcheta adua ni'alei, lemitrafu, ושמע מינה, כאמור רבנן במילתא, ומקמי דידי מתי שטרה לידי. So here, it's very different because it's very clearly that in order to repossess property, he will need to determine that in fact this promissory note came into the possession of the creditor prior to my purchase of property from the debtor. Now, it's a discussion among the poskim. What do you do with a get that lost, for example? A fellow, Minchat Yitzchak and others have a discussion. A fellow gave a get, but it's lost. And until you get this guy to sign the get and give it, you see skies, it was very hard. And to get a new one, it's very, very difficult. How you treat it? One case that came to the late Dayan Weiss, which I personally have the privilege not only to know him, but many years ago in 1987, he gave me a Kamma, he gave me a beautiful letter of approbation to my Hebrew book on Rashi, wrote a book on Biurei Klomar Berashi on the Shas, and he wrote a beautiful letter to me. So anyway, the Minchat Yitzchak, the Dayan Weiss, may rest in peace, wrote an extensive teshuvah, responsa over these issues. It was a fellow prisoner in Israel that sent a shaliach l'holacha, that eventually they convinced him, and he appointed an agent to give to his wife the get. And unfortunately, when they examined the get, it was written something that was a mistake. It was written Yom Shlishi, like Tuesday, Gimel Lachodesh, the third of the Hebrew month, and it turned to be incorrect. It was the fourth day of the month. So they ask a question, what do you do now? Because until they get that get from that prisoner was very hard. And because we have here some good example of issue of aginut, potential for this poor wife to be deserted wife, and in some painful cases even lose the potential to have children or who knows what. So the rabbis try to be as lenient as can be, and the Dayan Weiss said that since the get was l'shem gerushin, he, in a long teshuvah and long responses, said that you have to differentiate between get that was written for the purpose of divorce versus shitrei chov, the promissory note, that you have to treat differently. So he said, shtar chov, when it's come to a promissory note, you have a potential of, you know, repossession of unlawfully, and therefore you treat it differently. Versus the get, Dayan Weiss said, it's always, tamid yivdeku, it's always been checked very carefully to see the exact date of the get. So therefore, in that case, the Dayan Weiss was lenient, but obviously we are here not to pasken halachot, we just, we just bring the point based on our sugiyah in one of the responsa. Anyway, Mishnah tells us shichurer avadim. So here a situation that one find a document, a bill that is written there that specific servant is free. Harei ze lo yachzir. So you should not return. Tanu Rabbanan, again, you have to expend that based on the mindset and living in those years. Matzah shtar shichur bashuk. It was Canaanite servant, and once found in the market a bill that said that this servant is free. Bizman sheharav modeh yachzir le'eved. If the owner, the original owner, agree upon that documentation, then you should give it to the former servant. Ein harav modeh lo yachzir lo lazeh velo lazeh. If the original owner did not admit it, then it should not be given to neither one, neither the master nor the servant. The question is, bizman sharav modeh miya yachzir la'eved ve'amai. If you tell me that in a circumstance that the owner admitted that it is his and it's a emancipation, it's a freedom of his servant, so why give it to him? Why give it to him? Neichush shema katav liten lo benisan v'natan lo tishrei. We should say the same mindset, that the may intent, the scenario can be that the owner gave it half a year earlier, such as Nisan, and it happens that was giving it the shtar shichur, the letter of emancipation, in Tishrei. Ve'azal avda b'kanan nechasim minisan ve'ad Tishrei. You can call him former or the servant, purchase estate, purchase property between the half a year, between the month of Nisan until the month of Tishrei. Now, we learn in Tractate Gittin, page 77, that Yad Eved ki Yad Rabo, which means, figuratively, the hands of the servant is like its master, which means, in our language of law, is like whatever the servant does, it go to its owner. So therefore, it belonged to its owner. By a framework of ancient time, the Canaanite servants, by its nature, is during the servitude, during the time that he belongs, everything is going to his master. So therefore, Gemara in Kiddushin 23b expand on that. But Ve'azil harav v'zabninu. So the owner went and sold this estate, because it's his. ומפיק לשחרור דחתם בניסן. And the servant left with the letter of emancipation that the date is on Nisan, וכתריף לקוחות שלא כדין. And the servant can go in a way unscrupulously to those businesses or people that purchase from his master during that half a year, and he can claim untruthfully, unlawfully, that he was basically free earlier in Nisan, and therefore the right over the estate is his and not his master. So why we give him that bill of emancipation, bill of freedom? It may happen hypothetically that he can use it inappropriately. Now you should know that the several early sages like Rashba, like Ritva, said that it can be also transferring of himself, which means the master can transfer or sell him while he owns him in that sense to someone else, and therefore he can go further with that complication. There is a Ksod HaChoshen 39 that's expand on that, Nativot HaMishpat 65, Rabbi Akiva Iger, and many others expand of the variation, what happened and how to handle this type of situation. But now the Gemara just elaborates on this question. Hanicha leman de'amar. This Braita is good according to the one who said, which is Gemara in Gittin 12b, Zchut hu la'eved sheyotze mitachat yedei rabo. You have a servant, he is under his master. Normal person wish to have freedom, emancipation, be out. In the days that they used to own a servant, it changed his status by being free, such as he can be part, if he goes through the process of part of congregation of Israel, part of us, and he can marry someone who's free from slavery. That's what Rashi here tells us, as well as the Tosfot in Gittin 13. Uche Abaye de Amar, if in addition we follow the view of Abaye, who said, and that's what we studied earlier, if you remember on page 13, Edav bachatumav zachin lei. Abaye said, I'm translated it from here, the English edition, they said that when a document serves the interests of its intended recipient, its witnesses with their signatures acquire it on his behalf. So basically, a servant attains freedom at the moment his bill of freedom is signed, even if it's given to him at a later day. So consequently, the halacha in the Braita works out well. Shafir, the whole idea of zachin le'adam shelo befanav, something we learn both in Kiddushin 42 and other places, have an application. Anyway, אלא למאן דאמר, חוב הוא לעבד, שיוצא מתחת יד רבו לחירות. That it's the other way around, because he's prohibited to marry a Canaanite maid. Rashi tells us, here is the language beautiful of Rashi, he says, klomar, and we all know by now that when Rashi used the word klomar, something bothers you. I humbly think that it's the idea of chov, which is hard to understand what exactly chovah or chov applies here. But anyway, הפסד הוא לו, שאם עבד כהן הוא פוסלו מן התרומה, ואם של ישראל אוסרו בשפחה כנענית, so if he's serving a priest, so part of the deal in the priesthood, that all the household, including servants, can partake when he gets his portion of Truma. If it's Israel, as we said, he is prohibited from now on upon freedom to marry a Canaanite maid, which maybe he is in his mind to do. So what exactly, you tell me what is the advantage here? Because if it's obligatory for him to get free, so therefore you cannot tell me that the shichur, the freedom, emancipation, will start retroactively only when he hold the documents, which means the tishrei. So therefore, any estate that this servant purchased or involved between that half a year, which is between Nisan to Tishrei, it's not his, it belongs to his master. Vice versa, if he sold something again. So therefore, why are you telling me here that you return the bill of emancipation to the servant? He can abuse it, can use it inappropriately. So the Gemara explained, because guess what? When the servant comes and repossesses the property, we said to him, bring a clear proof as to when the bill of freedom reach your possession, and then you will be free. So למעשה, in reality, both Isha and Eved and servant is not the issue, because they need to bring Ra'ayah, they need to bring proof when exactly they receive the document, such as the Shtar Shichur, the letter of emancipation, versus when you have a Stam Shtar Etzel Malveh, just a situation that someone is a borrower from a creditor, so therefore it's different in Lo Yachzir. The whole rabbinic enactment that we discuss here, that the Bet Din taking the get after giving it to her and turning it and give her a substitute document, it's the foundation is from here, and there's a numerous questions halakha. One of them is someone who divorced outside in the diaspora, and she made aliyah, and she wants to get married, and the husband said he sent a information, whatever it is, email or whatever it is, to the Bet Din in Israel, and he said she is a married woman, she cannot get married there. And he proved that he has the get. The Bet Din checked the record, and it turns out that she is divorced. So how come? It turns out that when the Bet Din outside of Israel, when they are here in the United States, somehow along the way he was able to get the get, even after it was torn, back to him. And therefore, obviously she's a divorced woman and she can marry by any means. But the whole situation that sometimes either party, in this case is the husband, use artifice or use all kind of ideas to either being vindictive, express vendetta or vengeance, or other reasons that want to use and abuse the system, we have this obligation to clarify this. So one of the things, as we said, is to check the exact date on a document. The Mishnah teaches us Tanua Banan, Daitiki, if someone found Daitiki, and Daitiki, it's an abbreviation of will or deed of a gift. Matana, so it's not returned. So imagine if you have a situation that someone found a document from Shchivmira, someone who's in a breach of death. So Tanu Rabbanan Ezohi Daitiki, what exactly that shtar, the document? So they said is abbreviation of several Aramaic words, Da, Tehe, Lemeikam, Velihiyot, which means this deed will be stand and exist as proof that if this person dies, his property is to be given to so and so. She'im met nechasav lefloni, that if he passed away, his estate go to so and so. That's the rabbinic enactment that because of the circumstance, even without Maaseh Kinyan, even Shchivmira, even Be'al Peh, even the expression word, that Kichtuvim v'chemsurim damit is accepted to make Maaseh Kinyan, to make it transactions of deed even after he is expiring. Matana, what exactly the gift document with kol shekatuv bo mehayom uleachar mita, meaning anything that it's written from this gift is given from today and after the day of the giver. Alma kiktiva yom uleachar mita udekani v'ilo lo kani. So that's specifically from today and after the passing. But if it's that particular day, there is no deed or gift that is effective even without the clause and after my death. Amar Abaye, Achi Kamma, Ezer matnat bari, someone who's a regular healthy, she kematnat shchivmira, that treated as a gift of a person who is in a deathbed. De lo kani, it does not have the right over the estate, ela le'achar mita, and only after the passing of the one who gives, because the Rashi explained the whole idea applies in the shchivmira after the passing. שלא תתערב דעתו, because of his mental capacity. כל שכתוב בה מהיום ולאחר מיתה, it's written from today and after the passing. תמה דלא אמרתנו, האמרתנו אין נותנים. But if he said give them, the finder must give them. תמה דלא אמרתנו, that's the whole idea. אמרתנו אין נותנים. והמינו, we have a contradiction. מצא תיתקאות, הפותיקאות, הפותיקאות, ספותהת קאי, it's like he found wheels or designated repayment, ומתנות, אף על פי ששניהם מודים לא יחזיר לו בזה ולא לזה. Even both of them agree, he should not return to neither this person or the other. In general, if someone commended just before passing, hypothetically speaking, he can retrieve his decision. Amar Rabbi Abba Ma'amar lo kashya, said it's not a contradiction, it's not a difficulty. Page 19b, ha bevari veha b'shchivmira. So Rashi explained to us. Here you have the halacha that applies the bevari, that someone who's a regular healthy person. Veha, and the one that we speak in the other case is given by a person who's b'shchivmira, who's about to deathbed, about to pass. Matnitin lekatani, ha'amartnu notnim b'shchivmira, devar mehadahu. When we give, it's because the person is in deathbed, and as we explained, that applies. He potentially can retrieve and change his mind, but the will of someone who's in a deathbed doesn't have an effect only when he's gone. So it means by halacha, as long as he's alive, he can change his mind and retrieve it and say, I don't want to do that, and go in a different direction with his will. So now the Gemara expand why we're not concerned about some type of cheating when it's come to tzava'at shchivnera, someone who's in a deathbed. We don't have the time, but the Pnei Yoshua is a beautiful ma'alach here. Those who have time are welcome to see both Ramban and Pnei Yoshua on the Sugya. Anyway, what exactly the concern you have here? Dilma katva me'ikara lehai. May it written for the first one, let's using name. The first one is Reuven, second one is Shimon. Ve'imlach v'lo yavan yalei. Change his mind, he's not giving him the star. V'adar katva l'nishachrin b'yavel. Now he wrote it for another person, the Shimon, and he gave it to him. Now the first one lost his star, his document. Now he regretted what he gives to the second one. So now he commanded to return the document to the one who's the first. If you talk about a healthy person that gave a gift, late lepseda, Shimon is not losing anything. The chinafkei tartei, because each of them, Reuven pull out his document and Shimon pull out his document. Batra zachrei, which is Shimon received it. Why? Because Reuven is only matnat shchivmera, it's only the gift of someone who's in a deathbed. Versus Shimon, he has a shtar matanaya, a document expresses a gift. Because, as we said all the time, shtar shchivmera, the document that comes from someone who's in a deathbed, he can change his mind. The ha'adar be'mikamaita, that he can change from that rules to give it to the now to the first. If he gave it to the second one, with Shimon, in the will of someone who is dead, Belet Beiseda, the Batraita Zachi, which is the Reuven, we tell him to return the shtar. Because the moment Shchimira asks that, is like a new will. The Kadar Mikamaita, he changes mind from the first one. So basically, we differentiate between the two. כי כתנא בבתרא אף על פי ששניהם מודים, לא יחזיר לא לזה ולא לזה, בבריא דלאו בר מהדרו. He will make it clear that this is speaking about someone who's in a well health, and that's a total different. Because he cannot change his mind from his gift. דאמרינן, I'm going to use some example in ההלכה. דאמרינן דילמה כתבה ללהי מעיקרא, והמליך ולא יעבר לי. Wrote this for the gift to this person, to Reuven, and then he changed. He wrote to someone else and he gave it to him. Now he changed his mind from giving it to the second one. So then when he said to give it to the first one, since it's a gift of someone who's healthy, cannot change his mind. The one who's the first, so he pulled it from the second one, get it. וכבל לדבר להי, כתיב להשת כתב על האחרינה, ויעבד נעלי, דהיבית לי נשכרינה, לדבסיד לדקלים לי. So, the explanation is very clear in the Gemara. We differentiate between two avenues. Matnat shchivmera, the gift of someone who is in a deathbed, since he can retrieve, he can change his mind, so therefore we are not concerned that there is any act of cheating here involved. Versus the Braita that speak about someone who's a healthy, matnat bari, then cannot change because there's a concern about Ramot. Rashi here explain and the Ritva and Yoshua Hebelat, the Gdolei Poskim, the greatest rabbis, have a discussion over this issue. Trace the situation, someone, this is a case in Israel. I heard it from colleagues. Someone wrote a will, it was 57, 70. He lost his wife, etc., etc. He wrote a will that all of my estate go to the מוסדות תורה וחסד. Different yeshivot, religious institutions and things like that. Then at his 80s, he married a lady at her 70s. And later, which was already 57, 70, he left a new will, and he said that if I do not have children, etc., so it go to hell. So he passed away. And people say that Mosdot Torah, that all of those he gave them that will, they said, look, we have several tainas, several claims. He was above the 80s. To have children with his spouse is not realistic, okay? And therefore, we should disregard the last will. Especially they claim, since the money, the estate is for Torah and Chesed, those institutions that he wrote originally in the first will. The question is, donation to religious institutions is like a korban, like a neder, like a vow, like an offering. Cannot retrieve it, cannot change your mind. But the bottom line is based on our sugya, how you treat it. Do you treat the original one or the second one? You treat it as matnat bari, as matnat shchivmera. You go by the last will and testament. You go by the first will. It was based on our sugya, a rabbinic discussion. Matkif Rav Zvid objecting it. What's his objection? That the whole idea of the Batra speaking about matnat bari, that someone who's well gave a gift. He said it cannot be. Look at the system, look at the language. It has to be someone who's shchivmera on the deathbed. Matkif Rav Zvid v'ha'idi v'idi. If you go for both the Mishnah and the Batra, daitikaot katani. Daitikaot, meaning those documentation, if you go by the language, is a language of will of someone on a deathbed. So according to the Mishnah, if the one who gave it, so you give it to the recipient. The Batra speak about not to do it. So the language is called kedekatzir v'rami be'arsei. So the explanation is Amar Rav Zvid haveha b'shchivmera. You have to say that both the Mishnah and the Batra are speaking about the circumstance of someone who's in a deathbed. V'lo kasher. So you ask me, one time you said this way, the other time you said the others, one time you said that to give it, another time you said you're not. The Mishnah that said that he returned the document to the original one, by the commandment of the one who gives, it's Bey, meaning he himself, meaning he asked to give it to one that he wrote for him that specific will. Now we're talking about Naimaiset. Ivrei, it's Knunya. Soon you see that it's involved with the son, which means the one who commanded is no longer among the living, and the son that inherited him, he said that we should return the document to one who was written for him. So now the question is, now you should know that all these Batra is by Rabbi Yehuda Gaon. Rabbi Yehuda Gaon, it's like, the Mefarshim said it's like explanation of the previous Batra. So let's read it and understand what is the chashash of Knunya here. Matnit in the Kamma tnunotnim bedidei davar mehador. The Amrinan ein nami yavir in shachrin lebseda. Give it to someone who has no loss. The Kamma Batra zachi. The hadar b'mikamei. כי כתבנו בברייתא, אף על פי ששניהם מודים לא יחזיר לו לזה ולא לזה, בברei. That's after the passing of the father, his son. דאמרינן דילמה, כתב אבוה לעי. ואם הליך ולא יבין אלי, change his mind. ובתר אבוה, and after the father passed away, he inherited him as his son. כתב איהו, the son wrote a שטר מתנה, a gift, a document over the estate, לאיניש אחרינה, to someone else, ויאהב עלי, and he gave it to him, ואשתא כהדה במאהו, סבר מהדר לא מצינת רבי, אמר לו דא ביאהב עלי לאי, ונדבו לכתבי ונזל ואפי מיני, והוא זכר ונפלוג בעדי, אילקח אמרין עלי, ענן היי כתב לא יבין עלי היי, דדילמה מכתב כתבי אבוה, ומהב לא יהב עלי ויאהבתי רק איניש אחרינה. וכהד הרבה, אלא איקושתא כאמר דאיב לאבוך, זילת אשתא הכתיב לשטר אחרינה, דינא ולא יביא לאבויה, וכתבתי עד לאיניש אחרינה, לית בפסיידא, דקמא ובדרא כמה זכר. So the whole חשש of Knunya here, we differentiate between the avenue of the Mishnah and the avenue of the Braita. The Mishnah speaks about Shchimera, someone who's in a deathbed, that he can mitcharet, he can retrieve and change his mind. The Braita speak about the son, and therefore, since we have chashash of the clandestine deal, these surreptitiously Knunya, therefore you don't give. So the whole idea of the Yoshim is a lot of responses from different rabbis based on this sugya. A case, for example, someone who wrote a will gives his estate to yeshivot, mosdot Torah v'chesed, religious institutions. Then the end of his life, he was in a senior home, he had a little Alzheimer and more, and the new will said that it gives it to his daughter, and his daughter signed it, and is another stranger as a witness signed it. So that when the Beddin testified, those the daughter and the other Ed, the other witness, the question is, you take his form of like korban, like a neder, that you give it to the mosdot, you give it to the religious institutions, or you go by the last will and testament, but the question is if it was in the right capacity, is that something that he can hold as a last testament, is that responsible? The Ed was like wishy-washy, so was not sure. He did shuv, chozer umegid. So based on our sugya is a lot of malachim in the poskim. We mentioned earlier, you see a response in the Sivis, in the Tivot HaMishpat, in Ktsot HaChoshen, or Bekiva Iger, and more in the current poskim. Based on our sugya, the whole issue of contradiction among wills is, among many, is based on this sugya.